There's a long list of things that any leader has to get right. Whether it's for-profit or nonprofit, doesn't matter. If it's for-profit, you've got to have a really good product. It's got to be well-developed. It's got to be tested. It's got to meet a real need.
Yeah.
You need really good marketing to understand your market, know who the customers are, know where they are. You have to have a really good offer, and you have to have good pricing, and you have to be able to get your messaging out to those customers. You got to have good technology. You got to be able to build. As somebody at Bell South, the leader of our Bell South organization, used to say, if you can't build it, it's just a hobby. And that's true. You have to have really good operations because you have to deliver. You have to have salespeople who can really find a customer's need and really develop that prospect and sell. You need good customer service, and all of those things are important. You need good finance. You got to get the right capital in the right places. But all of those hard aspects of running an organization are fueled by people.
Welcome to the Coleman Group Podcast. I'm your host, Great Moore, and today we have an exciting guest, Kevin Phillips, who I will introduce shortly. I want to remind you all that we believe the best companies hire the best people, and these organizations have the influence to make the world a better place. Our goal with this podcast is to serve our listeners through our stellar and knowledgeable guests and the topics we cover, such as mental health, employee engagement, leadership, and more, in order to enrich the communities we serve. Kevin, thanks so much for being on the show. Delighted to have you.
Thanks, Great. I'm happy to be here and delighted to have a good conversation.
Excellent. I'm excited about our conversation. Let me briefly introduce you all to Kevin Phillips. He founded, which I think is just a great slogan, Build Them Up, which we'll certainly get into later. It's a campaign equipping leaders to improve organizational results by building up team members' confidence through growth. A 25-year corporate executive in marketing, sales, service, and technology, Kevin is the CEO of KDP Group, a boutique professional services firm helping clients increase profitability, improve customer loyalty, and navigate challenges of scaling through consulting, executive coaching, and leadership development. I love what you're doing in the community, Kevin, and thanks so much for being on. So tell me a little bit about how you got into consulting, kind of before we get into the meat of what you do.
Sure. I feel like I'm the luckiest man in Atlanta, at least, maybe in the world. I spent 25 years working for Bell South, and then later AT&T bought us.
Okay.
Two great companies.
Yes.
Who believe in their employees and who invest in their employees. And I worked for some amazing people who invested in me. And I was able to move all around the company, do all kinds of functions. I mean, only a big company could take the risk of letting an IT guy, and that's my background.
Okay.
I started as a programmer, eventually move into jobs where I'm doing marketing and product development and billing and customer support and sales. Most companies can't take that risk, but a company like that does, and they do care about their people. But a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to leave and take an early retirement. I know I have gray hair, but I'm not nearly as old as I look. No. So I'm still young and I have a lot of passion and I have a lot of runway ahead of me. And it was a great opportunity. And it really allowed me an opportunity to take what I've learned and the investment that the company and these mentors have made in me and do this for others. And I'm very passionate about it. And I'm very passionate about the people dimension of a business. And so that's what this firm is about. And that's what I'm on a mission to do.
Oh, that's great. I love exactly what you're doing. I think it's, especially as we talk about building organizations and people up. So talk to me a little bit about Build Them Up. How did that come about, and what's the philosophy behind it?
Early in my career, I had 1,000 opinions, and I knew more than anybody else about how a business should be run and how people should be managed. I didn't always like the way I was being managed, and I thought there was a better way. And at some point, I got promoted to where I was managing others, and the company started sending me to management courses. This happens all over the world, and most of them teach you that if there's a performance issue, if there's a gap, if you're not getting the results that you expect, you need to figure out the source of it. Is it that a person doesn't have the skill to do it, in which case you do training? Or is it that they have a will issue, that they don't have the passion, they're not engaged, they don't want to do it? And then depending on which of that you determine, you go down some path to try to fix it with that employee. through coaching and eventually performance management, and HR gets involved at some point, and then you have a formal process.
Right.
And so I started trying to use that technique. I was every day looking for gaps in performance. I was really too aggressive early, and that's probably not uncommon, but I was looking for gaps, and I would sit down with the employees and start talking about it. And then I was going to workshops and reading books to try to get better and better at it. But at some point, it dawned on me. I was sitting across from a gentleman whose name I will not call, but it occurred to me he has the skill to do what gap I'm seeing. And I've seen that he can do it, and he has the will. He wants to do it. So the formula that I had been taught, will or skill, wasn't working. And then over a course of some conversations, it dawned on me, he did not have the confidence to do it. He did not see that he could do it. I saw it, but he did not see what I saw. And then I've seen that multiple times over and over in my career, and it really led me to start figuring out what can I do to help an employee overcome that lack of confidence. And this has been a 20-year journey for me to try to figure out and learn, and now I want to help others do it.
Right. No, I love it. Well, and as you say, through your material, is that, and I love the way you phrase this, that you are enough, unique, beautiful, and capable. You can do it, improve, succeed. You will take control, take the next step, captain your own ship. I mean, that's so empowering. How did you come up with those phrases? I mean, what was the kind of the philosophy behind that?
I've been working on this for a couple of decades, but I didn't have in mind that I would ever do this for somebody else. That wasn't why. And so in the last couple of years, as this opportunity has presented itself, I've used that an opportunity to reflect. What have I learned? I've tried to do other research and talk to other people, and let me put together something that I could use as a workshop, or if I was consulting, how could I help guide somebody else through it? You need some kind of you need it codified in some way.
Right.
And so at some point I realized, well, it needs to be a little bit catchy. It needs to have some kind of rhythm to it, and that's where those words came from. It's just really an attempt to organize what I've learned through the years.
No, I really, and I think that's so powerful. I mean, as you were, a lot of times, especially as a leader, and I'm sure you've heard this kind of fake it till you make it,
right.
And it's, those, we don't realize that whether you're leading people or you're just trying to manage yourself, that you've got what you need. You may need a little help, but you're enough, right? You don't have to kind of put on this facade or this mask. And even like how you say in your material, a lot of managers kind of go with that drill sergeant type mentality.
The Marine approach of let's tear them down so we can rebuild them and refashion them in our own way, right?
Right. And that may work in the military. But it
not in a business, not in a nonprofit, not in a school.
No, it doesn't work.
It seems to me, at least what I have observed, is that oftentimes someone's self-confidence is rooted in a relationship that doesn't even exist in the workplace. It could be with their father or their mother or their little league coach, where some seed was planted that they weren't enough, and it probably wasn't even intended. These are people, parents certainly want the very best for their children, and coaches want the best performance. And oftentimes in the zeal to help bring out the best, the technique for doing that actually has the opposite effect. It's destructive instead of constructive. And they might say something, and those words might linger on in that child's mind through youth and then adulthood, and they take it to the workplace. And as a leader, we can't fix what happened 20 or 30 years ago on a ball field.
That's right.
Or at home at the dinner table.
Yeah.
So I don't think any of us would believe that you can fix that. But what you can do, I can't change what somebody else has done, and I can't even change you, but I can change me and how I interact with you, and we can start with today, and if we can get you on a better path. And as a leader, why do you care? Well, I've got results to deliver.
That's right.
Results is really the primary measure of any organization, whether it's for profit or not. And if you are not doing your best every day, then you're getting in the way of the organization not doing its best every day. So it's in my interest as a leader to tap into everyone's human potential, because when everybody is living up to their potential and growing, the organization will live up to its potential and grow.
No, that's so impactful. And you're right. I mean, I like what you said about, as a leader, what do you care? Right? Because I'm sure there are some leaders out there that just want the results delivered. But as you were saying, it's oftentimes not enough just to say, do this or else.
You can do that, and that is probably the most common management tactic.
Right.
And what you will get is, especially if you're in a for-profit corporation where I hold your paycheck,
Right.
it's amazing what you can convince someone to do or to fake doing, to do, maybe not genuinely, but to do if you hold their paycheck in front of them. But are you getting someone's best? You're getting their compliance. And maybe that's all you want. But most leaders that I know, they want more than somebody just to show up, punch a clock, and do the bare minimum.
Right.
You want them to do far more than that.
That's right. Yeah, you do. And that, it was interesting. I had heard a slogan or a story. I don't know if it was in a book or something. You may recognize it, but it was like, I've got these employees, and from 9 to 5, they're just kind of like barely awake. And then as soon as the bell rings, they're all racing to the car and they're all excited to leave. And it's like, why can't I get that enjoyment in the 9 to 5?
Exactly.
But it's to your point. I mean, if they're not inspired.
I love these memes on Facebook and Instagram about, oh, this is the Mondayest Monday ever. And, oh, it's a hump day. It's only one more day of the hostage situation. Those are hilarious. But, they're getting to, I think what you're pointing out is there's this belief that work is work and home is home and school is school and church is church and community. And that's not true. I've heard over and over again people say, well, we're doing something at work. We're making this big change. It's going to have an impact on you personally. It may even have an impact on your paycheck or your benefits or your future career possibilities, but it's not personal.
Right. Yeah.
Everything is personal.
Yeah,
if it affects my ability to bring home paycheck or have health care for my children if they're sick, everything is personal.
Yeah.
And I think really great leaders recognize that what they do at work has an impact on that employee at home. And what's going on at home has an impact on what that employee does at work. And you can, as a leader, change. I mean, you have no right to try to change something that's going on at someone's home. But you need to be aware that we're all one person, and everything that happens to us in any of the environments where we work or lead or whatever we may do has an impact on who we are in every environment where we show up. And if you will make right investments as a leader in the workplace, you will help make that better for them in those other places. And I believe it will come back to you in a positive way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. I think that, and also, I mean, I agree exactly what you're saying, but I also think that folks they're looking for that. I mean, they may not come to work and say, hey, I'm looking for somebody to hold me accountable, somebody to make me a better person, somebody to make me a better father, somebody to make me a better husband. I mean, folks don't typically say that, but that's what we're all really looking for, right? I mean, to a degree.
It is, and I think many times we're looking for it and don't even realize we're looking for it.
Yeah.
I had an amazing experience last year. After I had retired, I had a couple of former employees reach out to me wanting to meet, and it was very refreshing, and I really appreciated it. But one in particular said something that shocked me. It humbled me at the same time. We went through a really bad work situation together. And I had to do some difficult things and say some difficult things. And no one, maybe it's not true that no one, I think most people do not like to create conflict or challenge someone or hold them accountable.
That's right.
And I do not. But I know, as a leader, I've learned through time that if I don't deal with a conflict, it's like a cancer, it's going to get worse. And the only way to get to a healthy situation is to work through the conflict.
That's right.
And so with this particular employee, we worked through it, and it was painful for a while, and it took maybe months. I mean, I can't remember exactly. It's been some time ago, maybe 3 or 4 months. And what I think could have ended up being a situation where someone left or was separated from the company, they didn't. And in fact, they became kind of a superstar in that department long after I had left.
Yeah.
And she wanted to tell me that she appreciated how I handled it, and that I had forced her to look in the mirror until she saw herself as others did. And that not only changed her career, but she was explaining it changed her outside of her career.
Wow.
And I'd never really thought about, and we all have impact on people and don't realize all the ripples
Mm-hmm.
that impact has beyond just the single interaction between us and them.
Right. No, you're 100% right. And I think if we, certainly as leaders, but you're right, everybody does. And if we all kind of take that a little more seriously and figure out how to help other people have better lives,
Right.
I think we can have more of those ripple effects rather than, it's a natural tendency for us all to be very self-serving. I mean, it's natural.
It's true.
But we have
It's our human nature.
We have to kind of step outside of that. We have to grow outside of that paradigm so that we can help other people, get what they want. So
Simon Sinek has a book. It's, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old at this point. It's amazing. It's called Leaders Eat Last. And there are so many amazing learnings in that. But it talks about leaders as being servants. And I think that the typical construct we have is the leaders at the top and everybody else is at the bottom. But at the end of the day, if leader wants to get the result that they need the human potential.
That's right.
Exposed and opened up. And the only way you're going to do that is if you serve those people. And he talks about that in that book, and I would encourage anyone to read it.
Yeah, that's a great, that's a very good book, and it's a great mental image that leaders eat last. And I spent some time in the Army, and that was one of the things that we always did as leaders is we ate last. And it's amazing just those little bitty things that you serve. It's amazing how it does change the culture. It does change the influence of the internal and external influence, because it's interesting, I think, that we forget the indirect influence that leader, just because you have the title, right? I mean, you may just got pinned on leader today,
Right.
but your indirect influence is huge. And I think I think leaders forget that sometimes.
I think the great leaders actually accomplish more, not with the authority that comes with the title.
That's right.
But with the influence that comes from exceptional leadership.
Exactly.
And I certainly have experienced that. One of my mentors, Ron Friesen, I remember when he would come in to help me solve problems, I didn't ask him to, but he knew that he could offer some help. And so he would show up and do it, but he would do it in a way that wasn't, hey, I'm the big boss.
That's right.
In fact, most people would sit down with him and have a lunch and feel so comfortable talking to him. It was like their buddy next door. But other leaders would come in and people were stiff and, were very proper in what they said. And I think that's a mark of someone who gets that leadership occurs mostly through service.
It does. Well, yeah, I mean, because we're dealing with humans. We're dealing with folks that are sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, significant others. I mean, we're dealing with humans, and if you want that someone who's always proper like a robot and that can't open up what's going on, then it makes it very difficult to make any changes, to really get an idea of how do we drive change and how do we take this organization to the next level.
There's a long list of things that any leader has to get right. Whether it's for-profit or non-profit, doesn't matter. If it's for-profit, you've got to have a really good product. It's got to be well-developed. It's got to be tested. It's got to meet a real need.
Yeah.
You need really good marketing to understand your market, know who the customers are, know where they are. You have to have a really good offer, and you have to have good pricing, and you have to be able to get your messaging out to those customers. You got to have good technology. You got to be able to bill. Wow. As somebody at Bell South, the leader of our Bell South organization, used to say, if you can't bill it, it's just a hobby. And that's true. You have to have really good operations because you have to deliver. You have to have salespeople who can really find a customer's need and really develop that prospect and sell. You need good customer service. And all of those things are important. You need good finance. You got to get the right capital in the right places. But all of those hard aspects of running an organization are fueled by people.
That's a good
and if
point.
you overlook the human dimension of those, you will leave potential untapped potential on the table, and no leader wants to leave untapped potential on the table.
No.
So tackling that human dimension through influence instead of authority can make a huge difference on how well an organization thrives.
Yeah, I like the way you put that. Influence instead of authority, because that's a whole. Management just sounds like authority, doesn't it? It's if I'm in management,
It's like science, and it's spreadsheets, and it's
Right.
telling somebody, use a clipboard, go do this, go do that, and those things have to happen in an organization.
Right.
But how you do those
That's
things
right. Yeah.
makes all the difference in the world.
It's funny. We just got a puppy for Christmas, and so in the morning.
So you have a new boss.
So I have a new
and
boss.
it barks every morning.
It barks every morning.
Tells
But-
you when to go outside.
But in the morning, it's funny about influences is in the morning, he likes to eat before he goes outside. But I know that if he doesn't go outside first, I'm going to have to clean something up. So the way in the beginning, I was kind of like he was small enough that I could pick him up and take him outside. Well, now he's a little bigger, so I can't just grab him because he's quicker than I am. So the influence is I praise him and I give him a little treat, and now he just goes right outside. There's no argument, right? But it's so funny that just thinking about the puppy and management, it's so much easier with that positive influence than yelling or screaming or having the clipboard and managing. So talk to me a little bit about what are you seeing? I mean, you mentioned your career with Bell South, now AT&T. What are you seeing that's changed in the last 15 years as it relates to leadership and culture? And I mean, what are some things that you're seeing that maybe wasn't present 30 years ago at Bell South?
Well, change is constant, but the rate of change is speeding up. And the pervasiveness of change in our lives change is getting deeper and deeper. And I just think back at AT&T. Our history was we were a phone company.
Right.
That's all we were, and that was a big thing. It was a huge thing. It was an important thing. But what used to be a wireline phone connected to the wall became a wireless phone. But that wireless phone became something more when other technology it was mixed with it, and we have smartphones. It really took off with Steve Jobs. He wasn't the first, but when the Apple iPhone came out, it put in the hands a computer. And if you think about the kind of change that occurred with that, now that is not a phone. In fact, people don't use the phone so much for talking on the phone. They're texting, they're doing banking, they're using it to connect to Amazon or other online ordering. They're doing a wide variety of things. The GPS has been replaced, but think about the kinds of things changed with one device. And think about all the different generations that are now using it. My parents use it, I use it, younger generations, and what each generation does with it has a lot to do with how comfortable they are with technology. But think about the impacts to us at AT&T. At the time we rolled that out, I was in a customer service organization. So we had 20,000 reps in call centers across the United States, receiving phone calls. These people have been trained for years. AT&T has employees with long histories because it's a great company to work for. People don't leave. So so you invest a lot in training. So they're trained to support a phone. And now we have people calling in saying, hey, I can't connect to my bank. And we had to go change training. Because now we have nothing to do with the bank. And there are a lot of points of failure between that phone and the bank, many of which we have no control over, no knowledge of really. But that's what customers are calling. So think about how the change that had on leadership there. And I think the same thing happened in all industries. Think about how Uber is changing the transportation industry. Amazon is making huge changes in delivery business. And not just online shopping. They're changing the cloud where people get their data. I mean, it's just change is constant. It's fast. And as a leader, if you're not keeping up with all of that, you will become irrelevant very, very fast.
Right.
And as a leader, unless you're a one-man show, you need all of your employees keeping up on all that because you are not the one who makes or breaks your reputation. Your frontline employees, the one who talk to customers all day, every day, they are the ones that are creating or destroying your reputation.
Right.
And so that's the place to really invest, I think, to make sure that we're keeping up with changes. And I think that's a mindset change. You asked me what's changing in leadership. To me, the biggest change in leadership is that change is so much faster and so much deeper than it used to be. It's hard to keep up. And if you're not out there a step or two ahead, the change will occur. You'll become irrelevant before you even realize it's happened.
No, and I guess there's that willingness too, right, to make mistakes, so you can do it somewhat at the speed of change. Right. Because if you wait till it's proven, right? If you say, "Well, we're not a," just for instance, we're not a company that believes in folks working from home. So we're only going to hire folks to come down to downtown Atlanta. They're going to have to be at this office from 8 to 5, and we're not going to do telecommute or anything like that. Well, imagine if that was your mindset, you probably would lose half of the viable candidates in many cases. So, I guess that's the other question: is how do you gauge the it's changing so rapidly. How do leaders figure out which avenue to change with?
Well, I think leaders need to get out of their offices because I think being in a room, and leaders need to spend time thinking. They need to spend time alone thinking and planning, and they need to spend time with a small group of people and outside analysts and things like that. All that's important. But I think the most valuable thing is for a leader to get out, talk to their customers, talk to their frontline employees. The best intelligence any company has will always come from their customers and their frontline employees. Now, there are other great sources of data, but there will never be a richer source of data than those two sources. And if you do that, you're going to find your customers' needs are changing. You won't understand it at first because the customers don't always even understand what they're trying to say. Sometimes they need help trying to figure out how their needs are changing or emerging.
Yeah.
But at least you become aware of it soon. You can start hunting for answers and how do I solve for that?
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think it was said that Henry Ford said when he asked his customers what they wanted a faster horse. But he was listening.
It was the construct they had.
Right. They knew what they wanted.
Right.
They didn't know how to put it into context.
And the genius of a leader would be hearing that.
That's right.
And then helping that customer understand their needs better by creating a product that gets them there.
That's it. Yeah. No, I think that's so important is leaders getting out there. I love that show. Is it Undercover Boss?
Right.
It's such a great show because, but you shouldn't have to go undercover. Back to your point, if you're a servant leader and you're using the right influence, I mean, you can just talk to your employees.
I think one thing that happens is leaders read a book, they go to a conference, they hear an amazing speaker. And they're energized by it, and they recognize, okay, I need to go do something. And they think that the thing they need to go do is like a project with a list of actions and put dates beside it. And they don't realize that what they really need to do is start changing the culture. And that's you can't change a culture with a project, but you need to create an environment. And the reason why I say that is because when I would go out and talk to my frontline employees, at first, they really didn't want to tell me much. They would talk, and they had a long list of complaints, of things that needed to be fixed, but they didn't trust me enough to tell me the really good stuff.
Right.
So just having a conversation is not enough. You have to build the environment, if you will, or the ecosystem so that they feel comfortable speaking the truth to you, because sometimes they might need to tell you something that the layers of management in between you and them has filtered out.
That's so true.
Bureaucracy is necessary for structure, but it also, as in fact, that same book, Simon Sinek, he talks about how the larger your organization gets, the farther leaders get from their customers and their employees. And those customers and employees become abstractions. They become numbers or names on a spreadsheet, and they lose the personal connection. And that really has a negative impact on the decisions that start coming out of it. So I guess the point I'm trying to make here is, if you really want to get that kind of information from your customers and from your employees, you're going to have to create the culture that makes it okay for them to do it. And that might take some time. That's not a project plan.
Right. Yeah,
that's a change. If you want to change culture, change yourself first.
That's right. Yeah, that was, I think, Gandhi said, be the change in yourself that you want to see in the world.
Right.
And I think that's so true. Like if you want your clients and frontline employees to be more open, you need to be more open, right?
That's good. Exactly.
If you want them to share more, then you need to share more. Yeah, it's so true. The more layers you get, the further and further from the truth. Oftentimes,
there's another book I want to mention here. It's a book I just finished reading for the third time, and I think when you and I talked a few weeks ago, I mentioned it. Kim Scott, who worked at Google and Apple, I believe, wrote a book maybe 2 years ago called Radical Candor, Candor. It is amazing. I have read books before about how do you have difficult conversations, and they're all amazing. But this book, I think, very well explains that if you want to influence a change in behavior or a change in action or attitude with someone, you will never be able to do that until you can speak the truth to them. Pretending, false praise, none of that is going to really accomplish that if they don't see the truth. And it gets back to this story that I was sharing earlier with that employee. She was sharing, if I had not held the mirror up in front of her and kept doing that until she could see herself as others did, she couldn't correct the problem. But Kim Scott makes the point, if you want to speak the truth to someone, they won't be able to receive that truth unless they know it's coming from a genuine place, unless you really care for them. Kind of a truth and love approach. And I think that, and she talks in her book about how you create the culture that you can show that you care, but you can't fake that. That's not a fake it till you make it thing. If it's not real, they'll know.
Oh yeah,
and that's even worse.
That's so true.
But I think it's a great book. It talks about how to hire and use her concepts. But I recommend everyone
I think
try that out.
That's great. Great insight, because you're right. Authenticity you can't fake. I mean, there's one thing that gives us hope as humans, because that means computers are going to really struggle to replace us, because that's the one thing that we have is we can truly sense when someone's being genuine.
They talk about how kids know.
That's right.
If you're genuine or not. But the truth is adults know too.
They do.
I think as we mature, it's not as obvious to us, but we know.
We know. Yeah, we know. We know when there's when we suppress so much of it. Kids have it because they haven't suppressed those feelings. But as we get a little calloused, we start suppressing. Right. But we know. We just, I don't know why that person doesn't seem whatever, or that person doesn't seem genuine. We may not be able to put our finger on it, but there's a reason, and I think that's something certainly that management could struggle with if they're not if they're not paying attention. So, Kevin, what makes a good client for you? What makes a good opportunity for you to come out and kind of part your wisdom on organizations?
I think small to mid-sized business who is at a point where they feel stuck. They feel like they have a great product and service, but their growth has slowed down. And they feel like their employee base is not, they're not able to get from them what they need, what they know is capable. It's a perfect client. I have twice, working for a big corporation, when we went to launch a new product, we created an internal startup.
Okay.
And it very much looks like sometimes it's a separate department, maybe it's even a subsidiary. And I've twice been able to be part of these where we would take a product, we would test it in the market to prove that it was financially viable. And if it is, we would scale it up. AT&T doesn't make money selling 100 of anything. We need to sell millions of things. And so a successful small business needs to be scaled there. And what I've seen over and over again is what worked when you're small doesn't always work when you put technology behind it and you speed it up and handle it at high volume. In fact, speed and volume will usually break almost any process.
Right.
And it's not just breaking your technology, your systems. It could be your processes and policies, but it could be your people as well. You have to change your thinking, your leadership thinking, if you want to change your results when you're growing. And so to me, a small to medium-sized business that's growing but has hit a wall,
Yeah.
That's a perfect client for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds good. And then so typically you would come in and how does the process work with you? You come in and do an assessment. Do you work with leadership? I mean, how does that work?
It depends on what they think their problem is. But the first thing is going to be a conversation with the leader and the leaders, just to get some sense. I had a conversation just yesterday with a leader. He has a business and he's trying to grow it, and he feels like that he's stuck. And we were me, him, and his direct reports. There were 5 or 6 of us there, and we're trying to figure out what do they think it is. And they all have a very different opinion about what they think the customers believe.
Isn't that funny?
And he said, well, this is odd. I thought we all shared the same view. We meet every week for a staff meeting. How did we? And I think a lot of times, leaders are working on problems that aren't really the problem.
That's right.
They're the symptom of the problem. So the first stage for me is to have a conversation to figure out where they are. But then I think you have to do an assessment. If you have a customer experience issue, maybe you need a secret shopper to come in and figure out what's going on. Or maybe you go talk to the frontline employees. And in fact, what I encourage him to do, and this is not something, and he has not hired me. I'm hoping that he does, of course. But I suggested before he even considers hiring me, go talk to your customers directly, skip all the layers of management in between, and go talk to your frontline employees. And then you'll have a good idea of where your problems are, because they know. They know. The question is, why aren't they telling you? Well, you have to earn that kind of information from an employee or from a customer, because people don't like conflict.
No, we don't.
And especially telling a boss's boss's boss. Yeah, you're going to be the last person that hears from them what the truth is about your business. So, but yes, an assessment is early stage, and then in terms of fixing it, I'm always going to take the approach, the lens through which I look at any business or any organization, even a nonprofit, is the people dimension.
Right.
Yes, there are absolutely some hard things. How is the product? What's the customer's experience? Critically important. But how are you handling the leadership dimension, the people dimension? Because I believe that is how you unlock the potential of any organization.
No, I agree 100%. And that's our philosophy as well. And briefly, you do keynote speaking.
Speak.
So what
workshops.
What are some topics that you might cover?
Well,
there?
I am absolutely passionate about this Build Them Up, because I believe that every leader has the ability to tap into potential of their employees at all levels if they will focus on building up somebody. And this whole notion of confidence, some people have too much confidence. We call that hubris. That's destructive.
Right.
And our earlier conversation was kind of on the notion of some people have too little of it. They have self-doubt and they're bound by it. Most things in life, I think I have found, and I'm curious to see if you agree, there's a continuum where too much of something or too little of something is kind of destructive and a bad thing. It's moderation. So this is a case where I think you want humble confidence, right?
That's right.
But if you can start helping build up your employees to get to that confidence and help them get on a path where they're growing, whatever that means for them, and for everybody it's something different, then I think you have unlocked the potential of your organization. And so I have a workshop that I do called "You Don't Have to Tear Them Down to Build Them Up," and I do a keynote related to that as well. And it's really aimed at looking at what do any of us need to be successful. We need to believe in ourselves. We need to be on a path to grow, and we need the ecosystem around us, the people who are part of our network, our circle, to be encouraging us. That's what we need. So if you are a leader and you have 100 employees, you have 100 people who need those 3 things. What can you do? You can't be confident for them. You can't grow for them. What can you do to help them? And that's the mission that I'm on, is to help leaders, whether it be a CEO or a team leader or a pastor or an executive director of a nonprofit or a coach for a Little League. I want to help all of them use their influence as a leader to build up all of those people.
I love it. I love the message, Kevin. I think that exactly what you're doing is what we need right now in all facets, either to certainly help all organizations from profit to nonprofit to community and everything in between. So the best place for folks to find you is your website, thekdgroup.com.
Let's make it easy. Just kevinphillips.com.
Okay. Kevin Phillips.
It will take you to the same place.
Perfect. kevinphillips.com.
That's right. And there's a tab there for Build Them Up if you want to know more about that. Or you can go to www.buildthemup.info.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. Well, Kevin, thanks so much for being on the show. I think your mission and your message is exactly what we need right now, and I'm very appreciative.
Thank you for the gift of this opportunity.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Take care.
Take care.